Hi, my name is Genevieve, and this is Genevieve's Reading, and I'm recording this really brief intro before my chat with Sarah. Sarah T is a admin of the Blue Bookmark Book Club on Facebook. She's the third and final, so if you were here for the trifecta, it is now complete. And we just kept chatting and chatting and chatting, and I wanted to be a little more structured, or I should say, I attempted to be a little more structured, but we were just having such a good time that we kind of just went off the rails and talked about anything and everything. She's a very large volume reader. I would say I'm definitely less so than her, but it's not really about comparison. So she reads a lot, and so we talk about how she reads a lot, tips for increasing the amount of books that you read, and she does that without actually reading ebooks, which I thought was really interesting. And we just talk about what she likes, her history of reading, etc. This will probably be the last really big long video that I do because I have a feeling that the algo gods don't really love it, but I really love doing long form interviews, so who cares? I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, please do the like and subscribe thing, and you can find me on Instagram. You can find a bunch of Sarah's links down below, and happy reading, y'all. Bye. And what a journey.
We did it. We're good.
And I think this is perfect. This is a nice angle too, because we have your
Okay, good.
beautiful books in
I've
the
got
background.
I've got my books of the month ones. I've got my strawberry
Strawberry
shortcake,
shortcake.
who
Yay. Oh, I love it.
who I love. I collected these when I was kids, and so I have the first one. She's new, but I love her. I've always
So
loved her.
So when we're done with this, I'll show you the collectibles I put next to my book of the month. So I have, well, I mean, you can see some of them like here, but like,
Oh
this is like a little Yinzer guy, because I live in Pittsburgh, so it's like a little
yeah,
Yinzer
perfect.
doll. And then this actually is a hand stitch embroidery from an artist in West Virginia that I'm friends with.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and this, so do you use Chewy at all? Because you have pets, right?
I do have yes,
Do you ever use chewy.com for to order?
I do. Yes, that's where we get our dog food.
Well, I had an issue and they were great and solved it. And I thanked them. I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And I sent them a picture of Rip, my dog, to be like, "And Rip, thanks you too." Somebody went and hand painted that and sent it to me.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Right? I was
That's
like,
amazing. Yes,
yeah, so it was super cute. And yeah, that's like the
yes.
room of great. I have all kinds of tchotchkes and stuff up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. We love Chewy. I have two dogs and a cat, so I'm very familiar with Chewy. So we love them. We love them.
It's so convenient. But yeah,
It
so
is. Just
um,
have them sent to us.
thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me. I really
You're
appreciate it, and
welcome.
I
No
appreciate
worries.
your endless patience with dealing with the constant tech issues that we have. But
It happens.
it also wouldn't be the internet if we didn't have tech issues. So it's all, I don't even care if people know about it. And so I kind of want to start actually with who you are, where you are in the country, if you don't mind sharing that. If you don't want to answer any questions,
No,
feel free
that's
to.
fine.
And how you got involved with the Blue Bookmark Book Club.
Okay. I'm Sarah Trehern. I know my last name doesn't look like Trehern, but it is Trehern. I live outside of Orlando, Florida. I originally from Savannah, Georgia. So if you hear a little Southern accent, that's where that's from. Um, Susie and Megan posted that they needed help. And so I was the last one to join the group. And I love that club, and I love Book of the Month, and I love that group. And so I put in my little info, like, I'll do it, And thankfully they picked me because I love Susie and Megan. They have been such a great group, and now we're friends. And they do fun reading challenges, and we're all obsessed with Book of the Month. So I was glad they picked me. But I'm the newest admin for that group. I think they
So
knew each other before.
So we are probably, I think between you and I, we're probably, or at least I think, this is just my impression. So correct me if I'm wrong. I know that Susie and Megan are very into obviously Book of the Month, but I feel like you and I are the ones that read the most of them. Like we read a lot.
Yes. We read a lot of I read most of their choices. You did it last year, but I did it the year before, like 2020. I read all their main choices, and most of their admins too. add-ons, because yeah, I love to read, and so they usually pick, and they have skipped a box, and I have never skipped a
Neither
month.
have I. I've never skipped.
I've always found something that I can read. But they've skipped quite a few, so I think I'm the most fan of Book of the Month because it's opened my eyes. I have read different genres that I don't normally read, and so I am a huge fan of theirs.
Yeah, I have never skipped. I can't do it.
I
Even
can't
when I'm,
skip.
yeah, even when I'm like threatening to do it, I can't. I just can't do it.
And I always fill my box too. Like I always get three. I've never gotten one or two. I'm like, but there's room for one more. So I always get a full box. I have
Um,
I had several accounts for a while. I'm now down to just two. I usually just get one box, but every once in a while I break it out and get 6 books.
so it's funny because for when I first started, I never was like a fill the box kind of person.
I
Um,
really I've always been.
and I think it's just because when I first started, I really only, um, it was like a gift for myself, and I was very focused on like, oh, I don't want to like go too overboard or whatever. And I was, it was just also at a different time in my life, so I had to be a lot more budget conscious, like for a lot of those extras. And so
Absolutely.
so I didn't do it. And also I think I was a little more closed-minded about trying other genres. And I know I was like, well, I don't know about that. Um,
Right.
and now I'm the same way. I fill boxes. It's hard for me not to. I see, especially
I
because,
always get three.
well, and it's opened up my mind a lot, like the different
Yeah.
genres. Like I've just kind of not, I don't know. Like I think, oh, especially after joining the group too, like it's hard not to get like sucked into the FOMO. So yeah.
Yes. I definitely have that. I definitely have that. I'm like, I need that. I need that. I need
Why not this
that.
one? Why not this one? Oh, what?
Why not this one?
And
Why
someone,
not?
well, and someone said this too. They were like, I can't, like, but what if I do like it? Like, I have that thought all the time. Like, what if this is the next one that I'm
Yes,
gonna like? I get that thought
absolutely.
constantly now. And I don't like being told that I might not like something. Like to me, it's like a challenge. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I was saying this to Megan
Yes.
yesterday. I was like, I have authority issues. So like I don't like being told what to do. So uh, but yeah. So have you always been a really big reader, or is this,
Yes, no,
yeah?
I've always been a really big reader. I've always loved to read. I was always a good kid, and the only time I got in trouble with school is because I had my book out when I wasn't supposed to. They're like, Sarah, put your book out. It's time for whatever. And so, because I didn't like to be in trouble anyways, but sometimes I would get sucked into a book and I just nothing going on around me made sense. But so yes, I've always been a big reader. Love it.
I've definitely snuck a book
So
inside of a book. I've done that like many times in school. I was definitely like the quiet subversive kid. Like I didn't want to like
yes,
deal with parents being on my case or adults being on my case. So I was
absolutely.
really good at like not getting caught, especially like by the time I was in like late high school. I skipped like a lot. But what I did was is that I would go and I would call in, and I had like the voice of my mom, and so I could just pretend to be, I was very brave. Like,
Nice,
and so,
very nice.
yeah. And I only got truancy like once. I went to like, but my parents never found out because I was able to like subvert,
Good job.
yeah, I
Good
was,
job.
yeah. But like,
No,
I definitely
I
agree.
was
Like, I didn't want parents to be, or I don't want anybody on my case.
right. No, like I said, I didn't like to be in trouble, so I never skipped school or did any of that. But like I said, the only times it was ever an issue, it was like, put your book up. It's time for class.
And it's like I was
Like,
doing
but
it.
I'm at the good point. Can you just move? I don't need to do this. But
Yeah, I'm at the good part. I'm reading a lot. Like I'm gonna
I'm
read all this
reading.
stuff.
I'm reading. It's fine. I don't need math class. I'm reading. And I majored in English. That's what my degree is. So
Oh,
I've read all the classics. I've done all the things. So I've always loved to read. It's always been a passion of mine. So
are you someone that like were you somebody that like have you evolved over time with like the things that you read? Do you think that you read more diversely now than you did when you were younger?
I do. And Book of the Month has helped that because I used to be strictly, I was always contemporary, thriller, and romance.
Mhm.
I didn't do any fantasy. I rarely did literary fiction, horror, any of that stuff. But um, like I said, in 2020, I decided to read all their main choices. So to kind of, branch out. I mean, I was always willing to try things,
Right.
but I did have my comfort zones of genres, but that has helped me, expand. But it's always been, like I said, I've always been willing to try. And now that there's audiobooks, I'm willing to try more because sometimes what you can do in audio you don't want to read. So, that fantasy and nonfiction, I usually prefer an audiobook form.
I feel
And so that has helped me expand.
so when I was a kid, my mom introduced me to audio books on tape. That's like what they were when
Books
I
on tape.
was younger. So
Yes.
now they're audiobooks. Now we're all fancy with audiobooks.
Now we're fancy audiobooks. Yes.
Yeah, mine were like cassette tapes, and then
Mm.
eventually CDs, whatever the public library had. So, public libraries don't always have the best budget. So, it was just whatever they had. And we, yeah, I was really into that. And so I listened to a lot of different things on audio, but I agree with you. Like there's certain things when I would read a lot of classics, I find that the classics are easier to digest for me via audio because it's like
Hmm.
somebody telling you a story, especially something like a Dickens that's like in many ways, I think meant to be performed. Um,
Yes,
like it has that sense to it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Like, well,
free.
that's especially with Shakespeare. I took a Shakespeare class because, we hit you, if you got an English degree, you had to take a Shakespeare class. And it was really hard to read Shakespeare because Shakespeare wrote and play,
Mhm.
audience form. And so it was really hard I mean, we took a couple of classes where we each did a part, and so we absorbed it that way, but we really didn't have audiobooks. I mean, back then.
I mean, they
i'm
were
gonna age i'm
expensive.
gonna age myself. We didn't really have audiobooks when I was getting my English degree, so we had to read them. And so, I mean, now I think like, oh my gosh, I would have been such a better student now that there's audiobooks. But because Shakespeare does plays, and so it was hard to just kind of read it because but now that you can do an audiobook, especially because Audible will do like a full cast of those kind of for those classics, and it's so good. It's like a movie in book form.
And that's the thing
But
people don't realize is that like back in the day with audiobooks and the kind of change. I'm so glad you brought this up because there is an evolution with audiobooks.
absolutely.
When I was listening to them as a kid, and this is like the 90s, right? So back in the
Yes.
90s, um, you were really at the whim of whatever somebody had decided was worth investing the time and the money to put to
Yes.
audio, right? So it was a lot of commercial fiction, like a lot of like I listened to a lot of cozy mysteries and things like that. And there were a lot of classics because I think like generally people are like, oh, it's the classics, and also the classics are cheap to like get the rights to or whatever. Because I'm assuming
Yes.
there's something with
Because
that. Yeah,
the copyright has run out, so anyone can do it now. Own
exactly.
some of them. Yeah.
And I for a while, this is probably in like the mid 2000s, early 2010s. I volunteered briefly at there's a library for the blind in Pittsburgh here, and but also it's not just for people that are blind or low vision. It's for a variety of different physical challenges that one might have that might make holding a book or reading a book difficult, right? So they have a variety of different technologies
Right.
that help people gain access to different books. And they have recording booths there, and they will have people actually volunteer to record things
Oh,
for
nice. Yeah.
free. Yeah, which is really cool. So for the
That's
longest
cool.
time, it was an issue of access. I remember like my mom was like, my mom has had an Audible account since you could get an Audible username, which you cannot do anymore. It's now an email and it's your Amazon account. She had one before it
Yes.
was purchased by Amazon. So like she
Oh,
had an
wow.
Audible account for a very long time. And she is this huge library. And so we were on that train. Like, I think I don't know if I was still living at home when that happened, but it was a while ago. Like, yeah, it was,
Yeah.
so we've been invested in the audio, but she also bought audiobooks on CD. We've done all the formats. Hey, Baba, who's
This is
that?
baby. This is Apple. She's
I love
begging at the
Apple.
bottom.
Oh,
She's my
baby. You
sweet
can probably
girl.
hear Rip screaming in the background. He loves to scream, especially when I'm not paying
Yes, this is Apple. She's a sweet girl. But I didn't really know about audiobooks. I mean, there were books on CDs and stuff that I listened to, but I was really late getting into audiobooks because the first one I tried was it was like Frederick Backman's A Man Called Ove or Ove. I can't remember how you say his name, but I didn't know you could speed it up, so I was listening to it at like a 1, and it was too slow. It was too slow for me. I'm like, I could read this book and like, because I'm a pretty fast reader anyway, and so I was like, no, it was terrible. And so someone was like, well, bump it up. And once I learned you can speed it up to a 2 or however fast you can go, I was like, oh, I love these. But the first time I tried them, I was like, I don't care for these. But I mean,
How fast do you
Frederick Backman at a 1 was way too slow for me.
know? How fast do you usually listen to audiobooks?
I always start at 2.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes I can bump it up.
Yeah.
I'm listening to The Club right now by Ellery Lloyd, and it's usually if they have an accent, and I just did the Paris apartment, and usually I have to stick at 2. But if it's an English American, I can usually bump it up to like 2.5 or something. But usually British accents, I'm like, what? You have to keep it a little lower. But 1, I've never been able to listen to a book at 1 because it's way too slow for me.
I have a hard time. So I started at 1 because again, back in the day, you couldn't speed them up. So like, that was just always what it was. But then once I, got the apps on the phone, I was like, oh, cool. And then with that, I had to, and this is just like a tip for people that are new to audiobooks and new to speeding them up, which is this is going to lead into our ultimate subject for this chat.
Yes.
Is that I just did it in increments. I started at like 1.25, 1.5,
Yeah.
and then slowly
Keep trying until you find your right speed. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it'll change over time. Like now
and it
it's
will
like,
change.
yeah. And I'm the same as you. I'm like anything below 2, and I'm like, this is taking
I
forever.
cannot do below 2. 2 is my starting point. And sometimes I can get all the way to 3, and sometimes it sounds like, the teacher from Charlie Brown. Well, you're like, that is not understandable. So you have to bump it back down. And sometimes when you listen to it for a while, because I have during the day, most of my work I can do on the computer, so I can listen to audiobooks during the day. So, you listen to it for an hour, try bumping it up and seeing if you can go to the next, whatever bracket you're at.
So
sometimes you can.
Somebody introduced me to this new app. It's called AnyPlay. Have you heard of this?
I haven't seen that one.
It was just recommended in like a little text group that I was in randomly, and I downloaded it. And you can only bump up the speed to 1.75, and I immediately deleted the app.
Oh, delete.
I was like, no, like
yeah, like I said, 2 is my lowest. Because like scribd or scribed or however you say it. On the phone you can only get to 2, and I can do it at 2, but if you go on your laptop and listen to it, you can bump it up to 3. But I wish they would do a little like 2.5, because sometimes 3 is too much with some voices. But sometimes I'm like 2, I could, let's try it a different way. But
yeah,
I wish they had different varying levels like Audible has,
and
so you could try to find.
Libra does the same thing where it goes 2.1, 2.12, 2. And Libby's the same way too. Like, so it's like
Libby's the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because with like something like Scribd, it's like, I say Scribd, I don't care what other people say.
I say Scribd, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because they're unlimited, but they do cap you. And I just assume that that's like their way of capping people. Like
maybe so.
You won't get through them fast enough. And I'm like, ugh, I hate dirty.
Yeah. Like I said, most of them, because when I do it on my phone and stuff, with my iPad, it's at a 2. Like I said, laptop, it will make you, but it jumps from 2 to 3. There's no like in between like Libby or But sometimes I can listen to it at 3. It just depends on the voice and the book.
I'm going to send an email because I'm over it. I'm
I
done.
know. Susie has, I have an iPhone, but I think she has whatever the other one is, the
Android.
Android. Thank you. She says their app has it where you can go from like 2 to 2.25 and 3, but Apple, you just get 2 on the phone. That's it. You can't go higher unless you're on the laptop. But I'm like, if they can do it for Audible, they should be able to do it for iOS. Absolutely.
Yeah, seriously. So, this kind of leads into our discussion of like, and I kind of, you've answered this question sort of like, how did you start to read so much? How quickly do you read? And we're going to get into a controversial topic at the end about, because people get judgy about people that read quickly.
People get judgy. Yes, they don't think I'm absorbing it at a, like, you're doing it too fast. You can't enjoy it. Because I sometimes, before, I used to post my monthly reads and they were like, how do you do it? That's, I got so much grief for it that I don't even like to post it anymore, because I read 20 plus books a month. But some of those are audiobooks, some are shorter books. And like I said, I read pretty fast anyway. But they just kind of like, was like, you're not enjoying it because you're reading it so fast. I'm like, no, like, you can quiz me. I know what I read, but some of us just absorb faster than others. But I don't watch a lot of TV, so usually my spare time I read. And like I said, I have a job where I can listen to an audiobook during my work hours, so I can absorb a lot. And so, but they always give you a bad, like, you can't, you're not enjoying it, you're not taking your time to absorb the story and do this. And some stories do take a little longer to read, but sometimes you can go through them pretty quick.
And it's interesting to me, like, that people's automatic reaction is to judge this thing that you're attempting to celebrate. Like, as
yes.
it's so weird. I'm just like, why is your automatic reaction negative? Like, why is your automatic
negative?
reaction,
I think I once posted, like, I had a slow month because I only read like 15 books that month, and they were like, that's not as slow. I'm like, it is for me. I wasn't judged. I'm not, it's great. You read 1 book a month, you read 10 books a month, whatever. You're reading, and if that's what you love to do, then you're good. But it made me feel like so bad, like, that's not a slow month. I'm like, well, it was for me.
well, and you always, like, whenever anybody posts one of their reading challenges for the month, you are like always liking people's posts. You're always so encouraging,
yes.
like, and it's like, why people got to be negative? Why you got to be nasty? Like, you just gotta calm down.
Because people are like that, because we do reading challenges, and sometimes you can always tell when it's my challenge, because I do 25 to 30 books for the month, and then Susie and them do like 12 books for the month, which is fine. But I'm always like, great, they're like, I only filled up this so many, and I'm like, that's awesome. You read books that you wanted to read and that you enjoyed. That's all. This is for fun. This is, it's your pastime, your entertainment. So it's fine if you read 1 book, and it's fine if you read 30 books for the month. So,
People
get sensitive about it. Like, I'm judging them because they can't read as much as me. But
maybe one day they will, if they like, well,
maybe one day they will.
That's kind of what I want to get into. So I'm curious, like, if you have tips or thoughts about, like, if somebody, because I've actually had somebody approach me, more than one person approach me about, oh, I want to read more. I want to read a lot, and I don't even read as much as you do. But I do read, I average right now between 10 to 21 books a month, like, depending.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Yes. Yeah. That's awesome.
It really just depends on, and again, like, so the job that I had several years ago, I was a mathematical typesetter, and I sat at a desk for 10 hours, 4 days a week, because I was able to do that. I was able to work 4 10s, and all I did was listen to audiobooks all day. I loved, like, when I could just listen to a book. And my
Go through
favorite was when
story.
I could listen to a whole book in one day, you know?
Yes,
So why not? And now
absolutely.
I work for myself and I work at home. The only time I really can't listen to a book is when I am writing. So like today, I really didn't do much
Right.
reading because I was typing like up a lot of like stuff. Or if I'm doing like email correspondence and or data, like even with data entry, I'll listen to that. I need something in the background. Like I hate
Yes,
not listening
absolutely.
to something. So yeah. So what would you like suggest to people? Because it sounds like you've always been a big reader. So like,
I've
um,
always been.
so how would you recommend people cultivate that habit?
I just, it's if you want to just make time for it, I always start my day with reading before I get on my phone, before I do anything. I usually now I do Wordle. Thank you, Susie and Megan, for a new obsession. I usually do Wordle but I usually read before I get dressed. I usually will read a couple of chapters and start my book. Another tip is I love to get whatever book I have physically. I'll get the audio book from Libby, the library. And that way I can switch back and forth and that helps me finish a book a day. Um, but I think and it's fun if you can't, like I said, you can read, you can listen. Yeah, I would just set time for it if it's really important to you to read more.
I think that's the key. And I find that when people talk about like, oh, I can't pay attention to an audiobook, I think everybody's aptitude for that varies, right? Like, that's always
Absolutely.
the case.
Yes.
But for me, I do the same thing. Like when I wake up, like the first thing I do is I'll even show you on my phone. So like, I don't know if you can see this or not, but I have this little widget on here on my phone and it
Yes.
literally, it's my Kindle book, but I can also like swipe it and there's like other book related things. And so
Oh
I
yeah,
can
fun.
just tap that and it opens up to right where I'm reading. And that's also why I read multiple books at once because
Me too.
it doesn't bother me. It doesn't, they're all pretty
Mm-mm.
different. So yeah,
Yeah. And
whatever.
that's another thing is I used to be a read one book at a time kind of girl because that was before I discovered audiobooks because I was like, no, I'm want to be present in this story. And that's just how I read. And so everyone was like, oh no, you can read, and I was like, but now I have gotten to where I'm reading a couple of books at a time. I usually have the book I'm listening to, the book I'm reading. I've been doing one nonfiction book a month. So I have that one, and then I've been reading a classic a month too. And those take longer to read than the book, the current book I'm reading or listening to. So I could be on those two, the classic and the nonfiction, all month. And then, you just go through. So, but it's really helped me that I've let go of that one book at a time mentality that I
I
used to have.
I cannot read one book at a time. Like it is impossible for me at this point. And part of that
Now
is
I'm like, what was I doing?
yeah, like especially because I do read nonfiction. Well, so I'm an illustrator and I make tarot decks, as I mentioned to you. And part of that for me, again, this is my art practice. So this is all uniquely divined by myself. I read a lot of nonfiction or nonfiction about astrology and the history of
Yes.
tarot, history of the occult. And those aren't really books that I can like just devour, like because I'm reading them for reference. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
completely different, it's not for pleasure. It's really
Yes.
dense. I have one that's like I've literally been reading for years and years because it's so dense and so boring. I actually have it right here. It's the history of occult tarot. There's no audiobook version of this, but I don't think I would like an audiobook version of this because it's really
Sometimes the audio doesn't work for it.
see all my
Yeah.
tabs. Yeah. And with the tabs, like,
Perfect.
my tip actually, especially for physical book, is I love using these little tabs and setting a goal for myself and saying like, okay, I have to do so many of them a day. Or I push myself to do that. If I don't get it, then it's, whatever.
Yes.
But that's like having that little milestone for me is really, it breaks it down and makes it feel less like, I don't know, difficult, I guess. I don't
It
know. I
makes it
don't know.
more manageable.
It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I because I was telling Sarah, the other Sarah in our moderator Landis, she was talking. I had posted that I was going to read The Goldfinch this month because I've had it on my shelf forever, and I don't usually love long book. I would rather read 300-page books than one 900-page book. And that's just the way, I am. So I was like, I'm going to read The Goldfinch this month. It's been on my shelf forever. But I was like, divide it up by 30. We have 31 days this month, but divide it up by 31, and then it's only like 20 to 30 pages a day, or you can listen to it like 30 minutes a day. And that helps you get through. And I'm super bad about DNFing. I usually like to finish whatever, but even if I'm not enjoying it, I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible at DNFing. I wish I was better, but I usually will break it up and so that I can finish it. So far I've read like 100 and so pages of Goldfinch, because it seems to be a book you whether love or you hate. There's no middle ground for Goldfinch. And so by now I'm really liking it. It's so good. I'm absorbed into the story. So, but I have the whole month to finish it if I do get in. If it does kind of loses its steam in the middle, like some long books do for me, I have a goal that I'm going to read at least 30 pages of it a day.
Have you? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, just sometimes it's really nice, like, or sometimes it'll be like 30, like A Promised Land by Barack Obama. I listened to it last February, and there was like 28 chapters, and so I listened to a chapter a day. If you break up some of the books you want to read, but it's not like a page turner, I found it easier if you just break it up a little bit, and then you're reading whatever books you want to read, and then there's the little part, the classics too. I do it with the classics too.
For me, I actually have Promised Land, and I'm terrified to start it because it's so freaking long, and it's like,
so freaking long,
and it's like really, and the thing is, it's like, it's not even the length. It is the length, but it's also the
length for me. Yeah.
But it's also the fact that I've heard, so my brother's girlfriend was like, oh, I love how it gets into the minutia of like political stuff. And I was like, great. I don't know if I really want to read that. Like
that's me too. I don't really love politics and books and stuff, but I mean, it was a really interesting story to see. I love the beginning, and I did kind of lose its steam a little bit, but breaking it up like that. And I like to, once it's the end of the month, I like to be finished with all my reads, and so then I can start new on the first. I know I'm weird like that, but so it helps. And every once in a while I don't finish, and it does carry over, and it's fine. But I usually like to start and finish in the same month, so that's I don't know. It's all right there.
that might be a goal for me, because I'd like to do something like that.
Because like I said, I'm gonna finish The Goldfinch in March. I don't want to carry it over. I've got a month to finish it. And like I said, I'm a fast reader. I can listen to it at work, and I can break it down. So that's me. Like I said, there's some, Megan and I are doing like a Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, the
read along.
Yeah.
And there's some longer books at the end of the month where she you read a chapter a day, but then it carries over past the 30 days. And I'm like,
I'm gonna no. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, goodness, please, you can do 2 chapters for Harry Potter. That's not hard to read, but
I know, right? That's easy.
So let's just set it for a month. But she doesn't have that thing that she has to finish.
So for Goldfinch, I love that book. I read that book like closer to when it came out, I think. I don't remember, honestly. It's been years since I've read it. It was one of those books I listened to and then bought the physical copy, because I was like, this is so
yes, you loved it.
Yeah, I might have read it for a book club, now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, so the beginning I loved too, and then I remember we got to the part, there's like a section of it that takes place in Las Vegas, and that's where that's where people struggle. Like, I'll just be totally honest with you. There's nothing spoilery about it. Like,
no, you're fine.
Yeah, he's living with a different, he's like living in a different situation, and that is the part that drags, I think. But at the same time, it sets everything up. So like, the thing about the Goldfinch is that everything, it's very Dickensian. I feel the way that it's constructed. And I also think in the way that the descriptions are kind of put together, but everything that she talks about, she sets all of these pins up, and then she strikes all of them down at the end. And so the end literally turns into this wild caper that I will not spoil where it is, because that kind of spoils the book. But it's, the very end of that book, I remember being like, I tore through it. I almost barely remember it because it was such a a blur of like action. And I was like, what is going on? And yeah, so I highly recommend that. And I've gone back and just like read little bits of it because I just love the way that it's, I think just Donna Tartt's an amazing writer. For me, it's about the
Okay.
quality. For me, it's the quality of the writing. Like that's what I connect with the most.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I said, so
yeah.
far, like I said, I'm not very far into it because it's just second. So I've only, I'm still at the beginning when he's a child, but so far I'm very into it. I'm like, okay, this is good, but
And when you
like I
listen
said,
to the audio, Xandra, the actor that performs this book, his voice for Xandra is my favorite thing I've ever heard in my life. Like
okay.
he achieves the like throaty, smoke-filled, like jaded, I think I don't remember, she might be an exotic dancer or not, but like just like hard living in Las Vegas, and it's amazing. And he won an award for that performance
Oh,
because
nice.
yeah, which I think is just, I don't know if it's specifically, but just like the performance that he did within the book, I freaking love it, man. I just want to reread the whole
Okay.
French now.
I know you should reread it, but
Mm.
yes, I always try to pick one long book every month because, like I said, those aren't my favorites because I'm like, usually they drop in the middle and you're like, oh, but now that there's audiobooks and I can read a little, and I'll go back and forth. I don't mind going back and forth to, like I said, that's my goal I usually pick a classic to read in the month, a nonfiction to read in the month, and then a long book to read in the month. And then when I'm like through with a book, but I don't want to start a new one, then I can go and, read a couple of chapters of these books. So it
And
works for me.
how are you defining are you, oh wait, you're using the Rory list, right? For the classics, right? The Rory.
I am an admin of the Roy Gilmore, um, going through her list, and we pick a book a month to read.
Okay.
Not all of hers are classics. We do have some more modern, but there's a few classics, and I would definitely read those this year.
And is that part of the classic a month, or is that totally separate?
It's totally separate.
So, okay, so how do you define which are the classics that you read?
I've been seeing that. Have you seen like the Penguin hardback classics where they do like
Oh
these
yeah,
fun covers?
yeah.
I have been collecting those, and I read one of those a month. So like
Oh,
classic. And then in my Rory group, we'll vote on some, but there's, she reads like memoirs and nonfictions and some current books and then classics. So we pick a book a month. So there's kind of, a nice mix of those.
that's so.
But I've been trying to read one classic a month for the last couple of years.
And what is now I'm curious, because it sounded like when you were in the English major, it wasn't as much of a priority to read. Well, you had to read classics,
I
right?
had to read it, and yeah, and when it's homework, it's not as fun as when it's your choice.
Exactly.
And it's like you have to read this, and you have a couple weeks, and then there will be a paper on it and an exam on it, and so it's not as fun. Like I said, I love to read, which is why I was an English major anyway. But there were some books I'm like, oh, it's hard to get through. Some of those classics are tough. I love Jane Austen. I could read her all the time. I love like Little Women and stuff like that. But there's some books. There was like I did read a couple of Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist and A Tale of Two Cities, which I enjoyed. I like
I love
those.
Tale of Two Cities so much.
Like I said, yes, and I took a couple of Shakespeare classes because you had to, and I was like, oh, because like I said, Shakespeare's hard to read because it's not meant to read it. It's to be performed. They're plays. So there's a couple of like, oh, these are terrible. But but you had to because to pass the class. But
Now, did you have you discovered like any classics that you're like, okay, this is like my newfound favorite? Like basically, do you have favorites now of from the classics that you can recommend to people?
Little Women is an all-time favorite. I love that one. I read it every couple of years.
Yeah.
I Pride and Prejudice, Emma, I love those. Those are like my favorites. Last year I did a Jane Austen where I read all of hers, and I hadn't read a couple of them. And so I found a couple of new favorites. I loved Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, which I had never read before. So it's a good appreciation of what, now that I don't have to read them, it's my choice. But
Mm.
I, I did Frankenstein, and which I didn't love, but I do appreciate, what she wrote in that time period, and that it was very different for a woman to write. And
Mhm.
she was like 18 when she wrote that,
Yeah, she
which
was really young.
she was very young. I was very impressed with it, but I don't love that story. But I do have an appreciation of the classics now that I'm older, and now that I can choose which ones to read. But I love the Penguin classics. I love to have them on my shelf, but I don't want to have a book on my shelf that I've never read. So it's like a reward. I get the book, I read it, and then it can, go on the shelf.
I
So
love that. Yeah, I'm kind of bad about that. I definitely have some books that
I
I haven't
definitely
gotten
have books on
to.
it.
And I'm trying to get to. That's also where audio helps, where it's like, oh man, I really want to squeak this one in. I'm being really bad this month, actually. I have like this list that I really wanted to get through, and instead I was like, oh, I'm just gonna squeeze in this like 12-hour audiobook. Like it'll be fine. Like whatever.
Absolutely. Just
Um,
make them. Yes.
yeah, that'll be whatever.
Absolutely.
That's like a day or and a half.
Yes.
So the other thing I've done, what I've started to do recently is so I play video games but like when I play video games, I don't like video. It's funny. I like my video games the opposite way that I like my books. I don't want a lot of plot. I don't want a lot of story. I just want to sit there and like turn my brain off and not think too much.
Hmm.
And so what I've started to do is I'll play a game and I'll listen to an audiobook at the same time. And it is my favorite thing to do right now, especially like when I kind of pair the audiobook to the video game that I'm playing.
Oh, nice.
It's
Yeah.
really, really fun. Yeah, it's like my favorite solo thing to do. I find that I'm a bit of a loner. Like I mean, I have social friends, I have the social group, but I'm like my happiest when I'm just like everybody leave me alone and I just want to be in my little like
Right.
world and not do anything and like yeah.
Yes, I totally get that. I'm an introvert. I'm a homebody. I'm much rather stay at home and read a book than go out and,
Now,
do anything.
are you also an ebook person or are you not an ebook person at all? Really at all?
I will read. I do get a few arcs like that's like early release of books from NetGalley, and so I will read them. But I usually prefer a physical copy.
So do you have a
I
Kindle or do you read it on your phone?
I have a Kindle.
Okay. Yeah,
I regularly use it, but I do have.
it took me a while to get used to my Kindle, but now I call it like a funnel. Like it's a funnel I can just put on the top of my head and then the book just gets dumped in. I think
Hmm.
I feel like I read faster like with my eyes when I read on my Kindle. So like I'll
Okay.
and that's why like I have it on my phone and I now that Kindle supports infinite scrolling, which where you can just go like this, I'm like
Yes.
yeah, that's like another kind of like tip for people where if you do this anyway, if you're scrolling social media, then just do that with, on your phone. Like maybe you're
Yes.
scrolling anyway, so might as well read a book.
Yes. And that's one of my advice for people who want to try different mediums, try an audio book, try an ebook. If paperback or hardback, see what you love. I am, like I said, as you can see from my mini book, I do like book, but I will read an ebook and I will clearly listen to audiobooks. But you should try different ways to see how you to find the right way for you. There's nothing wrong with an ebook. There's nothing wrong with listening to a book. It's however you want to absorb the story.
Now, do you like are you considered a mood reader or are you more of like I like a list and I like to kind of go down the list?
I like to plan, like when we do reading challenges, I like to assign a book for each, and then I read what I want.
We are the same because we are
Okay.
the same. Like I
Okay,
really, if
awesome.
people think I'm nuts, like people are just like, what? No, no,
Like,
that's
what
not
are you
true.
playing? No,
Yeah, I love planning. I just like
I
to,
love to plan it, and then
yeah.
I love to read what I want.
And then like I will slot things in that are against the plan, but they always
Hmm.
make sense. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I think that's why I'm not very good at reading a lot of arcs because I like to read an arc, but you can't really plan around
Yes.
it. And I'm like, this is
No,
annoying.
because you're right. For an art, especially on NetGalley, it docks you if you don't read it when you're supposed to. You have some time to read it, but you're supposed to read it and review it before it comes out. and
Right.
however, and I understand that. And I usually just plug them in like, okay, I usually like to go through and, like, okay, I'll read a contemporary. I need a thriller, or I kind of join them all together as a mystery suspense thriller. I call them mist books. I'll usually get a mystery suspense or thriller, and then, because I don't want to read. I think I would get burned out if I read all contemporary fictions or all romances or all mist
Same.
books. So
Same.
I like to switch out my genre. So usually when I'm like, okay, what should I read? I'll go and see what I have on NetGalley that's coming out this month. So I usually will add that. But
Same person.
like I said, I just usually kind of switch them around and see what I'm in the mood for.
We are
I will
literally the
never,
same
I'll
person.
never assign a date like you have to read,
Yeah.
I just will go through and, whatever I'm in the mood for.
I have done a thing where I have kind of blocked out books over a certain amount of time. I don't do it anymore just because it takes extra time. But yeah, wow, we really are the same like we read very similarly. Like it's kind
Okay,
of
good.
weird.
I know, because usually I'm kind of a weirdo when it comes to,
Yeah,
you
people
know,
are just like, why are you so
people,
organized? I'm like, it brings order
yeah,
to the chaos of
because
my life.
yes, like I said, I always have a list of books that I want to read that month. But if I don't read them, oh well, I'll move on to the next month. Or, it's not like when I was doing my English major, like you have to read this book at this time because there's a quiz and then a test and a paper. I say read what you want. And it's fine if you only want to read romances and you only want to read thrillers. You're fine. Just, if that's it. Like I said, I read a lot, so I like to mix it up so I don't get bored, or, but it's fine, whatever you want to read.
Yeah, I tend to so I think especially as like the world in the outside gets very complicated and scary, like
Hmm.
having this stupid plan that doesn't really matter, but it's my plan.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's like, what is it, like Full Metal Jacket, like,
Yeah.
like there are many other plans like it, but this one's my plan.
Yes, absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
it's calming for me. It's like an
It's
anxiety
calming.
reducing thing. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was talking about this with my therapist. So I actually have a spreadsheet that I got from Sarah's Bookshelves Live. And because she sells a spreadsheet, and I am obsessed with my spreadsheet. I tend to my
I keep,
spreadsheet like a Zen
I
garden.
also keep
Do you
a
too?
spreadsheet. Yes.
Yes, it's the best.
I'll have to check out hers. I've made my own spreadsheet, but I like to keep track of what I'm reading and like how many. I've been trying to diversify my reading because I read a lot of women, and so I'm trying to, get like BIPOC, or, men, or, like a different it's because, just to see, but different genres I would check, and I try to keep track of all the reading challenges I'm doing to see if I've got a book for that, prompt. So I love a good book spreadsheet too.
It's amazing. Like, yeah. And I like,
Yes.
and again, not everybody has to conform to that, but like, I find it
No.
so relaxing. Like, I could love to like go over my little spreadsheet. And what's cool with hers
Yes.
is that you enter in this data and then it generates all of these really cool summary graphs that you can look at.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
and then you can compare year over year of like what your reading is like, how it's changed. And it's intense. Like you can even track like what publishers you do. And what she does is, so at the beginning of the year, you set up a what is called a success rate. So like based on a number that you choose, you could say that a successful book is, I think hers is like 3.5 stars or more, because she does half stars.
Okay.
I put mine at 3 because I don't care. Like it's not really that important to me. And
Right.
if you rate something above that, then that is towards a percentage of a successful book. And then you can see like how many successful books did you finish versus obviously if you didn't finish it's not successful, but how many books did you finish that weren't successful? And then you can kind of
Okay.
go through and like look and compare. And so you can see like, is that based on the publisher or based on the page length or based on, a variety of things. And this year she has one where it's like, I'm really selling this thing and not sponsored. But she has like a thing where it's kind of like story graph, where it's like you have like the little, you can talk about the flavor of the book. So it's like, was it adventurous? Was it this? Was it that?
Okay.
And then you can also keep track of your DNFs, which I don't DNF a ton, but I do DNF. I will not waste time, because I think at this point now, I don't know if you've had the same thing, but like I've gotten to the point now with my reading where I know if it's successful for me, like if it's going to work for me kind of before I go there for the most part. Not
Yeah,
but yeah.
I know. I need to work on that, because I'm like, what if it gets better?
Yeah, no, like that's the thing. Like I see
And they
people
never
post that.
do. And they
They
never do.
never
And this is,
do. Like people post that. They're like, oh, does this
I
get better? And I'm
know.
like, girl, I don't know. Like, first of all, I don't know
Yeah,
what you like.
no.
I don't know what you like. Like if
Right.
if you don't like the first 30%, then you're gonna hate the last
I'm
two
like,
thirds.
DNF it, but I'm so bad. I'm like, but I started it, and sometimes I am so past the point where it's like I should just finish it so it counts on my Goodreads reading goal.
I've done that. I've definitely done that. I've
Yes,
been like,
you have to
well,
finish. You might as well just finish, especially if it's a shorter book. Like I only have so many. Oh, fine, I'll finish it. But I'm super bad, and Susie laughs at me because she's always like, "Dina, I know that book wasn't for me," and I'm like,
but also because we
maybe, but
read, because if we read faster
I
too, it's just
know,
like, I
and
know
I
it's
read
not going to take that
fast.
much longer. I'm like, well,
Exactly,
I don't know, whatever. Um,
exactly.
so I actually have a question for you, because I just read a book that I gave
Okay.
5 stars and you gave it 3. And I'm
Oh
curious
no.
why
Okay.
you gave it 3. I'm very curious about this.
Okay.
So I just finished In Every Mirror She's Black, and it like blew
Okay.
me away, especially that ending. That ending was, we're not going to spoil it.
Oh. Okay. Yes. Don't spoil it.
I didn't see that coming. Like I
I
already knew
didn't.
it was like it was gonna be like, I'll even like occasionally I will rate a book before I even finish it, because I'm like, nothing's really good. I had to go change my review because I was like, this blew me away. Like,
Yes.
so why was it 3 stars for you?
Okay. 3 stars is not bad for me. That means that, and I am very stingy about my 5-star reads,
Okay, so that
because
already answers a lot.
okay, first off, uh, trust me, if a 5-star means that I'll reread it, and I rarely reread any book.
Okay.
So if I give it 5 stars, that means I love it and I would actually reread it. So if you see a 4 from me, that means it's pretty much a 5 stars from anybody else, because I'm like, 5 stars means it has to be like, like, this is the book. This is my book. 4 means that I really, really liked it. There was a few little things that wasn't perfect for me, but 4, if I give it a 4, I'm recommending it because it was really good. 3 means that I liked it. It just I won't reread it, and I didn't love it. I didn't really, really like it. And that one, I didn't really bond with the characters. I did. I thought it went off slow, and there's sometimes when there's a multiple characters thing, it's hard for me to like really fall for them, because there was 3 different storylines, even though they had a similar, it was all to that guy.
Mhm.
And so I liked a couple of the story with the characters, and then a couple of them they weren't like, I didn't really mesh with them well. I mean, it was still a really good book. So I gave that 3.5 stars, which means I liked it.
I want to get some book recommendations for you, since you have read so many of them. And
Okay.
actually, I think I'm basically reading all the main picks again this year. I might not finish all of them. I'll have to say, I will say this right now. You definitely inspired me to do this, and it was the coolest challenge I think I've ever done. It was
I
also
love that.
it was
I
super
love that you did
difficult.
it.
It also
Yes.
was hard.
Some books were hard to get through. Like there were some I was like, I would have DNF'd this. And like I said, I am bad, and I don't like to DNF, but I'm like, this book is awful. It's not for me.
But it's also fun to go into Barnes and Noble and be like, I read that, I read
I
that,
read
I read
that.
that, I read that. Like, like,
Yes. I love to go to Target because they have a smaller book section. I'm like, and sometimes I'll count how many books. Like I've read a bunch of these because I read usually the popular choices, and the book of my choices are usually there, and I read most of them. And I will say that I did the challenge in 2020 where I read all the main choices and a lot of the add-ons, but I didn't make it a challenge, but I read most of the 2021s. There's like 5. I don't think 5 out of the
which ones
60.
did you not read? Which ones did you not read?
Okay. I have not read Damnation Spring. That was for you. because you were like, this is awful.
Yeah.
I haven't read The Prophets yet, but I have that, and I've been meaning to read it.
Mhm.
The Keep, I think what's it, The Keeper of
The Keeper of
the
Night. Oh, I love that book. That book is so good.
haven't I haven't read that one yet. I think there's like two more. I'll have to go look to see, but there's like 5 of the 60 I didn't read last year.
Keeper of Night is really, really good. I loved the crap out of that book, but it's also like it's super actiony, and for a fantasy, it doesn't take forever building the world, which I really appreciated. I think that like the biggest like hurdle to climb in fantasy in general is the fact that like because it's a fantasy world, they have to like explain a bunch of shit to you. And my comeback to that is, do you have to explain all of it, and do you have to do it like that? You know what I mean? Like there's like layers.
Right.
And what's cool about Keeper of Night is that like it goes in, like it is a complicated system because you're literally exploring 2 worlds. So she does twice the job and half the page count, and she does a great job, like where you're just like,
Okay.
okay, like this is what Reaper is, this is like, you know, the order of operations, this is why, like, and she just gets to the freaking point, and it's like, dude,
That's nice, because sometimes fantasies are done. Like I said, fantasy is one of the least genres that I read. I will read a couple of them. And I read what was the other fantasy, like Half Sick of Shadows. The only reason I didn't do Keeper of Springs is because it said it was #1, and usually I want to finish the series or the duology when it comes
oh
out.
yeah, for sure. No, that's smart. And actually with this
Because I
one,
don't like
for
to
that I
wait.
would recommend it. Yeah, for this one I would
Okay.
recommend it too, because it's like the way it ends, I was like, oh my God. It's not so much a cliffhanger, it's more like, okay, I
Okay.
would like for this to go do the thing. What
Yeah.
was it? I
I'm
did,
very bad about starting series or duologies when all the books are not out. Because I'm usually like, I want to read it through.
but I've
I don't
noticed
want
that,
to wait a year.
yeah, seriously. But I have noticed that so first of all, I'm actually bad at reading series. Like a lot of times I'll just
Oh,
read the
really?
first of a series and then I'll never pick it back up again. Like I will do that. And which I know is wild, but like I don't know
I
why I do that. Like it's more like you have to prove to me that like it's sort of like a pilot episode. You know what I mean? I'm like, you have to prove that there's like bones here that are like worth sticking with. Um
yes.
and most of the time it's not really the case. So, you know, or
Yeah.
I'll get to the point. Like actually, I think These Violent Delights was like that for me. I really liked the first one. The second one,
I
I
say I
really
don't
didn't care for. The second one, I was
really.
like, this is
Mm,
not that good. Um,
yeah.
and but
I
have
didn't really care for the first one, but
I
you
think
know,
what works for specifically book of the month with a lot of, I've noticed this about a lot of their fantasy picks, is that they pick things that people kind of have a general awareness. Like they're usually the more like classic retellings or fairy tale retelling.
I guess.
People kind of know what it's about, basically.
Yes,
What did you think?
absolutely. And I love retellings, so
What did you think of Half Sick of Shadows?
I liked it. I gave it a 3, which means, I liked it. I enjoyed the story. I wanted to see the conclusion. I didn't love it. I wouldn't reread it, but I did like that one.
I
But
wouldn't read. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for, I love a fairy tale retelling or a classic retelling. I love to see how they do it and how, they evolve the story, or, so I usually will read those.
So
So I did like it.
did you know anything about King Arthur before you read it?
Just the basics, the sword and the love story between Lancelot and Guinevere
Yeah.
and Arthur. But that was about all.
Yeah, that's all I knew too. I even watched that Merlin TV show and I don't remember any of it because I
I
watched it like
didn't
a million
that.
years ago. I'm bad at
Yeah,
remembering stuff from TV and movies. I'm like, I don't know.
right.
I like,
Yeah. I don't know. Merlin wasn't a big one that I knew,
yeah.
but I did, like I said, I thought it was pretty good.
It's interesting because when I was really hesitant to start it because I don't really care a lot about King Arthur stuff.
Yeah.
And I had read Legendborn and I kind of got burned by that one because
Yeah.
I
I didn't love
really
that one.
I was bummed because it's also King Arthury, and the King Arthury stuff, like literally there's a character in that book that his sole existence is about explaining the King Arthur shit to you. And I was like, this is boring. Like, I don't really care at all about
Right.
this stuff.
Yeah.
And then the
Like,
secondary magic
I want to
system
fight.
in the secondary magic system in that book was way more interesting. Like when she met her therapist and stuff. And I was like, this is way more interesting than literally any of the King Arthur
Yes.
crap.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, I don't care about that. And so I was like kind of nervous about Half Sick of Shadows. I was like, I don't know. Am I gonna have to sit there a bunch of
Yeah.
Welsh? Like, legends
Yeah,
and like,
right. Because
but
Arthurian's not my go-to
no,
fantasy.
but it worked out. And I think specifically like with Guinevere's storyline, that was kind of unexpected. Again, not going to
Hmm.
spoil. I was like, oh,
I'm not gonna
weird.
spoil it. Yeah,
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Like
like
that's
I
a weird
said.
turn. And I was like, okay, fine. Like I agree with you. For me, I think I might have given it 4 stars. Like 4 stars for me is like, I'm glad I read this and I would recommend it to people. Like that's
Right.
yeah. And 3 is like recommend with caveats, maybe. And like 5 is like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
5 is like that's like me. Like I said, I'm very serious about my 5 star.
I need to
Um,
get stingier about my 5 stars.
I'm sent. If you see me with a 5 star, that means I loved it. I loved it. That was it for me. 4 means I really liked it. I was happy I read it. I remember it. And I usually do only a half star for the threes, like 3.5 that I really liked it, and a basic 3 is okay. And then 2 means I should have DNF'd, and 1 means I did DNF.
2 means I needed to DNF. Amen to that. I'm
Yes,
like, damn it, why did I finish this? Like I finished it though.
right.
2 means I definitely finished it.
And 2 means that I finished it, but it was a struggle and I shouldn't have.
Before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we plug everything that you are doing. Any bookstagram, any groups that people can join, anything like that. Like how can people find you and connect with you online?
Um, oh, I should have looked at my Instagram.
Oh,
I'm so bad.
sorry, it's okay.
No,
I
it's
can edit.
okay. I'm so bad about my Instagram. I barely post, but I'm usually you can just find me at the Blue Bookmark. I usually post what books I've read and what reading challenges we're doing. That's where I am mostly on. So, like I said, I do have an Instagram. I barely use it.
Oh, and
I
then
want
what
to.
about
I want to be better at it, but the Blue Bookmark is where you'll find me.
the Rory Gilmore Book Club?
Oh, that's 20. I think it's called 2022 Rory Gilmore read along or something.
Okay, cool.
I
And I'll
have
put the
to.
link.
I'll post it.
Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
can post in the comments. But I that was another thing. I started the group and they were looking for an admin. It's not a I'm not very big popular over there. I mean we post and we pick a book, but I'm way more popular. I mean way more active in the Blue Bookmark.
That's my main one too. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
Thanks for
you
letting me
for
pepper
inviting
you with
me.
questions. Yeah, this is so much fun. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna say goodbye to the internet. Goodbye, internet.
Goodbye.
And then I'm going to stop this